For centuries, the standard history textbook has presented a very specific narrative. In 1521, Ferdinand Magellan, a Portuguese explorer sailing for the Spanish crown, navigated the Pacific and discovered the Philippines. Successfully crossing that ocean was a massive navigational achievement. However, framing the moment those ships dropped anchor as a discovery relies on a severe historical blind spot. When Magellan's men waded ashore, they encountered a landscape already defined by complex human settlement and established local politics. The traditional label of discovery erases centuries of pre-existing human civilization and culture that had been thriving across the archipelago long before any European map recorded the island's existence. Long before 1521, the archipelago was home to diverse indigenous groups. Austronesian settlers, the indigenous Atas, and later Malay migrants had already established distinct societies and cultural systems. This map shows the economic reality at the time. The islands were active participants in a sophisticated trade network, exchanging goods with merchants from China, India, and the Arab world. Specific port communities served as bustling maritime hubs, deeply integrated into the Asian economy. Magellan's arrival in 1521 brought two distinct worlds into sudden, volatile contact: a depleted European fleet and a highly connected Asian civilization. By the time the fleet arrived, the crew was barely surviving. The 98-day Pacific crossing reduced the men to drinking putrid water and dying from severe scurvy and starvation. In March 1521, the crew finally sighted Samar and made their first contact with the native Visayans. Magellan immediately tied religion to Spanish sovereignty, ordering the celebration of the first Catholic masses on Philippine soil. On the island of Cebu, Magellan baptized the local chieftain, Raja Humaban. To secure an alliance, Magellan positioned himself as a military protector, offering Spanish weapons to subdue Humaban's local rivals. But Magellan overplayed his hand. He assumed that a small group of European soldiers could dictate the complex political rivalries of the islands. That confidence led him to Datu Lapu-Lapu, the chieftain of Mactan. Lapu-Lapu flatly refused to submit to Humaban's overlordship or the authority of the Spanish crown. Looking at this tactical layout of the battle on April 27th, the math was disastrous. Magellan ordered his ships to stay back and waded ashore with only 49 men to confront roughly 1,500 native warriors. Lapu-Lapu's forces overwhelmed the landing party in the surf. Magellan was struck down and killed in the shallow waters of Mactan. The man credited with finding the islands was decisively defeated by the inhabitants just weeks after his arrival. Following the battle, the surviving European crew limped away to complete the first circumnavigation of the globe. The Philippines, however, remained entirely uncolonized. Standard histories often overlook the timeline that followed. It would take more than 4 decades before Spain could successfully return and hold territory. Between 1525 and 1542, the Spanish crown launched 4 subsequent expeditions. One reached Mindanao but could not navigate a return route. The others were diverted or failed to reach the archipelago entirely. This 44-year gap highlights the sheer logistical nightmare of the Pacific crossing and the extreme fragility of the early Spanish foothold. The logistics of actual colonization arrived in 1565 with Miguel López de Legazpi. This expedition marked the heavy, militarized return of the Spanish fleet under orders from King Philip II. Legazpi established a permanent settlement in Cebu and eventually captured Manila in 1571, replacing local leadership with the stone fortress walls of a colonial capital. It was Legazpi's arrival in 1565, not Magellan's in 1521, that officially began over 300 years of Spanish colonial rule. Modern historians now reframe 1521 as the beginning of a struggle for sovereignty rather than a discovery. While Magellan is remembered globally for the first circumnavigation, in the Philippines, Lapu-Lapu is honored as the first national hero, a leader who successfully resisted European colonial aggression. The history of the Philippines is defined by the civilization already waiting on the shore, rather than the ships that eventually arrived.